In October of 1989, Mattel released something that was, well, it was interesting. It was a cool enough idea, and it would definitely leave its stamp on the gaming industry.
Powerglove.
Today on Rewind Toys, we're going to talk about the Powerglove.
I love the Powerglove. It's so bad.
All right, so we've talked about the NES and we've talked about the Game Genie, but the Powerglove was one of those things that on paper seemed really cool, but in practice fell short, and yet still we all sort of love it. Also, it didn't start out as a gaming device, at least not the way it ended up. So let's begin with a guy named Thomas Zimmerman. Zimmerman was a student at MIT, and he had always been a fan of music. He used to, air conduct orchestras as a kid, and something about those movements sort of stuck with him. Anyway, as he got older, the memory got him to thinking, what if you could create a device that allowed you to manipulate virtual items with just movements from your hands? With his idea in tow, Zimmerman built his first prototype glove. He did this using LED tubes and a gardening glove. He didn't stop there, though, and in the late 1970s, early 1980s, he took it further, eventually creating what he called the Data Glove. Now, the Data Glove used sensors and allowed him to control music with hand gestures. Of course, it didn't take long before the potential for other applications was discovered, and Zimmerman, along with the company Virtual Programming Languages, or VPL, would retool the glove and begin using it for virtual reality applications. The Data Glove system was wired to a computer. It was interactive and contained fiber optic bundles to track movements and orientation. That data would then be transferred back to the computer so that the information could be duplicated virtually. It was a huge step forward for VR, and what's more, it worked. The Data Glove becomes somewhat in demand among scientists, and Zimmerman, along with another gentleman, Jaron Lanier, the founder of VPL, they realize that their cool VR system could have some real potential. They start brainstorming on ways to reach a wider audience. And then they decide to reach out to Abrams Gentile Entertainment. Now, AGE is a marketing firm with some fairly substantial ties to the toy industry, having just landed a deal for an awesome new line of action figures called Visionaries. Don't worry, we'll talk about Visionaries at some point. AGE gets these two connected with Mattel, and they pitch their idea for a VR-like system using the Data Glove. The problem here is Mattel, they're not too excited to jump back into the world of video games since their Intellivision had flopped a few years earlier. Still, they do see potential, and if they made the glove for another company, then they weren't technically an actual video game manufacturer. Mattel, they noticed Nintendo. Nintendo is a company that's making a really big splash in the gaming market at this time, and they think Nintendo might be the answer. And so a demo model of the glove was created, and that was shown to the executives. The thing was, you can't sell a multi-$1,000 device to kids, so they changed it a lot, and they wanted the new version out in 10 months. So with that begins the process of stripping down the Data Glove. Now, while the original Data Glove aimed for high-fidelity VR tracking, the soon-to-be branded Powerglove was heavily scaled down for the toy market. The original glove used optical sensors for precise finger-bending detection, but the consumer version used rudimentary flex strips. The Powerglove also used cheaper carbon-based sensors and ultrasonic speakers to measure hand movement. You see, one was extremely accurate, and the other was the Powerglove. At least they made it look cool. They gave it a really futuristic design that they said was inspired by RoboCop. So that original Data Glove would have cost you around $10,000, and it was intended for companies like NASA. And the early version, well, it nearly went to Atari back in 1983. You see, Zimmerman was working for Atari at that time, and he actually showed the device to his boss, who offered him $10,000 for it, which he declined. That turned out to be a very wise move for Zimmerman. You see, Zimmerman was laid off from Atari, and eventually he moved to VLP. If we take a look at the 1990 film Lawnmower Man, well, this is an actual data glove being used here in the movie. And this is the kind of thing it was actually intended for. So unlike the Game Genie, which we talked about here in that episode up there, Nintendo actually worked with Mattel on the Powerglove. When the glove came out, they weren't cheap. They were around $100, which in today money would be around $250. That's a lot to pay for basically a controller that didn't work very well. And they didn't work very well. Sure, upon release, they sold nearly 1 million units, and initially they were considered a commercial success. A lot of that was probably due to the genius marketing of the film The Wizard, which they used as a tool. They did the same thing with Super Mario Bros. 3. But the reviews for the glove, they weren't great, and overall reaction was poor. Using the glove and its clunky controls just wasn't practical for most NES games. Hey guys, if you don't mind, take a real quick second, lower your hand down there to the subscribe button and click it. That would be awesome. Helps us out a ton. And if you got like an extra second, and we're talking like 2 seconds here, subscribe and then hit that thumbs up for a like, and that helps us out a ton too. All right, let's get back to it. So maybe you're wondering what happened to the Powerglove, and I mean, we sort of told you already, but well, at least in part, but we'll go into it a little bit more. The Powerglove, well, it didn't work too good. People's arms got tired, gestures didn't capture well into the system, and like I said, they were fairly expensive. The other problem was there were no real games. Nintendo left the games to Mattel, and Mattel refused to design more games until they knew how the device would perform and sell. The catch-22 here was the device would have performed better with games intended for it, and that likely would have helped continue sales, but you see the problem. 2 games were released specifically for use with the Powerglove. Super Glove Ball, which was a somewhat 3D puzzle maze type game, and the horrible Bad Street Brawler. Here it is. Yes, both games were playable with the regular NES controller as well, but they did include moves that could only be executed with the Powerglove. They were branded as part of the Powerglove gaming series, so there you go. 2 more games, Glove Pilot and Manipulator Glove Adventure, were announced but never actually released, and there was another unreleased game, Tech Town, that was said to be a virtual puzzle game that lets you move a robotic-looking hand around a deserted space station. You could find tools and pick them up and use them, things like that. Honestly, this could have been fun, but again, it kind of sounds like your arm would get tired pretty fast, because they did. You see, regular gameplay was tracked for hours, but Powerglove gameplay was tracked to be around 15 to 20 minutes. And that is pretty much it. The tale of a cool-looking, glorified, and not-so-great working controller. Sure, as a controller, they suck, but as a nostalgic display, they're kind of amazing. Collectors want these, and today, they'll cost you anywhere from $80 loose up to $500 for one in box. And the box art looks amazing, so it would be cool to display one in box, but honestly, it would be just as cool to display one loose. I wouldn't mind owning one. I remember using them, and you're moving your hand. Like in Mario Brothers, you had to do this, because there's the sensor, right? There's a sensor on your team, and when you get to the end of the sensor, you have to like move it around to go back to the... It really was a pain in the butt, but they looked really cool. Really, really cool. And as a kid, I wanted one then. My uncle had one. I didn't have one. My uncle had one. I used his. I never owned one myself. Everybody wanted one. And we all wanted one. We just, Hey guys, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming here and for watching the show. Please leave your comments down below. Things you would like us to talk about. Things you remember. Love hearing the stories. Love getting the feedback. Really appreciate each and every one of you. And until next time, remember, when it comes to these funky techno toys from the 80s and 90s, the hunt, still half the fun.